All right, we're back. It's COMP123. It's week 12, lesson 12, part 2. We just finished adding this print button functionality. I want to talk about message boxes. I kind of really scratched the surface of that stuff a little bit last time, but I want to talk about them a little bit more detail. Again, if you want to bring up your PowerPoint presentation, I got it up online if you want to follow along with me, or you can look up here. Again, we want to use message boxes, and there's different signatures we can use. We'll talk about that in a bit for message boxes, but pretty much this is the general form. You've got your message box.show, a text message, the title bar text, the message box buttons, so you can choose if it's got an OK button, a cancel button, whatever kind of buttons it has, and your message box icon, right? Which you can also choose, like almost like this little info button, info icon, or whatever. So even though we didn't put anything there last time, I want to kind of practice kind of putting things in place this time, right? So let's take a look at this. So text message string, which is the first piece, this text message string right here, right, is string literal. You can put whatever message you want, or you can also put a variable in there as well. Title bar text, self-explanatory. Here are the message box buttons. It's from an enumeration. OK, OK cancel, retry cancel, yes or no, yes, no, cancel, abort, retry, ignore, right? These are all the standard buttons that'll come up when you use your message box, right? And the other one is the message box icons. You can choose an asterisk, an error, an exclamation, a hand, an information, none, question, stop, warning, things that make sense for your message box. So again, you're doing assignment 6, and you want to give user feedback that he's entered the wrong information, right? So what do? You pop up a message box, right? Let's do one. Let's do a message box, kind of a custom message box here. I'm going to pull down another control. Here's my print button, right? And we'll leave this print button in place for a second. You'll see. I'm going to take away the oval because I don't think it makes any sense here. So we'll just delete that. And meanwhile, by the way, since we're adding new things, I'm going to go into my Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home, Changes. I'm going to say added print form and print button. Commit. And I'm going to basically go to Home. I love people paging me, texting me, calling me. It happens every time during classes. So okay, so I want to put together this other message box, and I want to put it up when I kind of click a button, right? Just for now, so we know what happens when you click a button. We're not going to make some kind of other scenario in here, right? So what I need to do is I need to put up my toolbox, and when I go to Common Controls again, I'm going to clip this toolbox in place, pin it in place. I'm going to drag and drop a button in here, and if you notice, my button, this is one way I could have done it, right? But my button has to be resized and everything. What should I have done? Copy paste. So let's do that instead, right? Because this is the thing I want you guys to learn how to do, right? So I'm going to go copy, Control C, Control V. I've got my other button. It's not a print button anymore. I need to kind of rename this, change the properties a little bit. So I'm going to go to where am I say my button? I'm going to call this message button. We'll kind of throw up a few different messages. Message button. And down here, we'll change the text of the message button just to say message. So what would this message do? Here it is. Make sure this is kind of centered with the button, the other button down here. So my idea is when I click the message button, my message box pops up with different things, right? So let's try this out. I'm going to double click on this message button to give me this click event, right? And now I'm going to do message box dot show, and if I open it up, if you notice, there's 21 different signatures here. 21. There's lots of different options here for showing stuff, right? So I want some kind of, and if I scroll down, by the way, like for example, it shows me here that I got a Win32 owner string text. I got a string text and a string caption. I got an owner string text, string caption. String text, string caption, Message box buttons. It's not the one I want. String text, string caption, message box buttons, and message box icon. This is the one I want. Right? So I'm going to go back up. So it's number 7. This is the form that I want to take, right? So my string text, let's leave that one up. I want to say kind of like, say hello world. Why not? Hello world. My string caption, right? This will be the title bar, yeah? So we'll say, again, hello world message, right? My message box buttons. Okay, so how do I do the buttons? So it says message box buttons dot some kind of button, right? Well, look, it says message buttons dot is how I do it. So I say message buttons dot. It's not buttons. It's button dot. And which one I want to make which buttons do I want? Right? It says back color message button. That's not what I want, man. Message buttons. It's an enumeration. Let's go back. Right? So it's message buttons. Hey, where the hell is it? Message box buttons. That's why. Message box buttons dot. Here are the options. Abort, retry, ignore, OK, cancel. Let's press OK for this time. Just OK. And let's get an icon. Message box icon dot. I'll use the first one, the asterisk. Okay. I'll get rid of this so you guys can see more of it. Looks like this. So when I click on the button, this message box comes up with a hello world in the middle, hello world message, the title, message box buttons, that's okay, an OK button in the middle, and an asterisk icon. What's the asterisk icon? Let's take a look. I'm going to run this thing now. Click message, and then bam, here it is, hello world. That's what it looks like. Here's what the asterisk looks like, hello world. Here's my hello world message with the OK button. Click it away, it's gone. Right? If I click it again, I'm clicking it. Now I want to click over here. Can I do that? No, because it's modal. Right? Which means as soon as this message box is up, I can't do anything unless I click it away or do something with it. Can't click here, I can't click anywhere else. Right? My application, in fact, is paused or stopped. Right? Now this is, like I told you before, very bad form. Right? We don't want ever for the application to stop like this unless there's like some serious error. We want the user to stop. This is pretty annoying, eh? Imagine if you push up these buttons every time. It's like, oh man, I got some serious issues, right? Press OK, and then kind of close that off. So this is one aspect of it, one type of message. Let's change the message box buttons to OK cancel. So I'll say instead of OK, we'll go OK cancel. There's OK cancel, right? And we'll change the asterisk, instead of the asterisk, we'll change it to like a hand. Why not? Just kind of, put that in there. And then run it. See what happens now. Click message. And here's it says hand, but this like X comes up. Yeah? Now, the thing is, does it make a difference between OK and cancel? I don't do anything right now. How do I know what kind of response I'm getting? OK and cancel. If I ever wanted to kind of have, do you want to do this? Like a yes, no. So let's just change this to a real message now. Right? So instead of message, we'll go back here and say, instead of hello world, we'll change it like, do you want to continue? Want to continue, right? And then instead of my hello world message, we'll put it, my title bar will say continue, right? And message box buttons, instead of OK cancel, we'll change these to yes, no. Yes, no. And instead of my hand, which makes no sense, it says hand, but I get an X. I'll put a question mark up, right? Because that makes sense, like a question. And then, you guys got this? Message box buttons, yes, no, message box icon, and I'm going to press play. If I do that, I get my message that comes up is continue, right? Do you want to continue, yes or no? Well, I'm not checking for what's happening afterwards. I'm just pressing this nice little button up. So this looks nice though, huh? The little message box looks nice. Doesn't do anything though right now. Got to wire that up. How do I wire up that? I could, but if I double click on this button, it doesn't do anything, right? Because remember, I'm in runtime. I got to do things in design time or program time, whatever you want to call it. So how do I do it? So I tried these things, these kind of things, right? And it talks to me about how to use overloaded methods, which we know how to use already, because you can use we can test multiple fields. We're not going to go into that. This is just for error handling, if you will, right? So pull up different boxes. Yeah, these pulls up the different boxes, but they don't do anything right now. We don't know what to do, right? I'm going to skip over to enhancing message boxes and see if we can pull up a message box. Well, it doesn't do anything right now. Well, if we want to display the message string, right? Again, you can use it in a quote. You can put it as you can concatenate it and throw things together, like a bunch of different things to throw things together. You put like some kind of variables that you kind of put up together. Like example will be this. Here's a message string: total sales plus total sales decimal toString, right? And then when you do your message box.show, you say you show your message string. So all this stuff right here, from here to here, is going to go into your message string. That's another way of doing it, as opposed to putting in a literal, right? Okay, that's cool. So we know we can do that. That makes sense. Here's multiple lines. If you want to kind of create multiple lines, you can use this \n, right? We know how to do that as well, right? And \n, if you remember that from programming 1, right? It's our escape character that goes to new line, a new line character. Just like we did with, we can actually do a console.write, and if you put a new line in there, it'll act like a console.write line, right? Same thing here. We put this new line character in there when we build up our message, and then when we go to here, when we're showing our message down here in a message box.show, it has multiple lines inside the message box as opposed to one. Okay? Got to move on here. And here's some other escape characters if you want to show a question mark and so on. As a review, these things you should know already for what kind of escape characters they are, right? Because you guys got this in programming 1. But I put it up here just to remind you, if you want to put in some escape characters like \n, which is a very common one, I'll take you to the next line. We tried this different message box buttons, but we get back something called a dialog result, right? So that's a special kind of data type. So far we've gotten things like, you know, string and integer, decimal, and so on. We're getting a special one back called the dialog result, right? We're getting it back from the message box, right? It returns a function, a value, but what happens if we don't listen for it? Well, where does it go? Well, it goes into the bit bucket in the sky. It's gone. That data is, if you don't ask for it, it returns nothing. It doesn't go anywhere. But we can listen for a dialog result, right? And we can also try and figure out what dialog result type, right, as an example, is coming back at us. This is how we can know if it's a yes, no, okay, cancel, that kind of thing. So again, you've got this yes, no. Here's our message box buttons for yes and no. But what we want to do is, when we actually program things out, we want to create a new object called a dialog result. This object right here, right? So inside of our code, we want to say dialog result is my return dialog result. Let's do that. So in here in my message box, I'm going to put this new variable, right? I'm going to call it dialog result. It's a data type, dialog result, right? And we'll call it, again, return dialog result. It's just a variable. You can call it whatever you like. Okay, so my return dialog result is unused right now, right? And if you notice, I have a message string, whatever, we made our own message string, right? And this time, instead of just having the message box.show on its own line, we're going to say return dialog result is equal to the message box.show, which means message box.show is going to return something back into the return dialog's result variable. So we're going to do this. So return dialog result is equal to this message box.show. Okay. So now this return dialog result, right, is going to tell me if I got a yes or a no. Right? That's what's going to be. That's where the yes or no is going to be stored in here. If I leave it like this and not go further, there'll be no difference to what I've done so far. Because I'm not doing anything with the value. I'm getting a value, but I'm not doing anything with it. I got to do something now, right? So if I go back here, if I notice, I say if my return dialog result is a dialog result.yes, a special type of return, then do something. Otherwise, do something else, right? So if it's a yes, right? Let's try this out. If return dialog result, here it is equal to a dialog result dot, and there's different ones, abort, cancel, compare to, equals, a get hash, blah, 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 blah. We want a yes, right? If it's a yes, that's cool, right? We'll do some kind of thing out here. If it's a no, right, then we'll do something else. Right? So if my return dialog box is a yes, then I want to make another message box. Let's try this out. Right? Message box dot show, and we'll say a simple yes. Right? That's it. Because you can do that. It's an overloaded method, so you can put one or more parameters in here, right? And otherwise, we'll just say no. So we can see that it's working. That's the only reason we're doing this silly thing, right? So no, right? So yes or no. Okay, let's try this out. So if I run it, I'm going to pull this up to the side so you guys can still see this thing. A yes or no. I got my message. Click the message. It says, do you want to continue? I press no, right? And then no comes up, right? So we know that's working. Message, if I press, do you want to continue? And I press yes, then a yes comes up. That's interesting what I've done here. I've actually done a dialog box that makes another dialog box come up. A little message box, another message box comes up, and then it kind of goes all the way back, right? Well, these message boxes, all these message boxes are modal, right? That means that each one of them have to be clicked before you continue. So this is a really nice little piece that you can use for data validation, right? You can say, are you sure? Are you sure you want to clear the form? Yes or no? Right? Or okay, cancel. And if it's like okay, you clear the form for them. If it's a cancel, you do nothing. You don't clear the form, right? Are you sure you want to delete the file? Yes or no? Okay, cancel. That kind of thing. This is what we see a lot of these things come up, and that's how you test for them. So to me, this is a little bit of key functionality for you guys when you make forms. You need to know how to fire up a message box that says, are you sure? Do you want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. You made a mistake. Something like that. Questions around this? Straightforward, huh? So, and this is weird that it's all cut off like this, but talks about a couple additional signatures in here. I don't know why it turned out this way. I love it. But at the end of the day, you get the gist. Okay, let's move on to sharing an event handler. So we've got event handlers. We've got some buttons, and sometimes you might have a button that does and something else, some other kind of control that does the same thing, right? Like actually the function is identical, right? So why would I write two event handlers to do the exact same thing? That's like a lot of code duplication, right? You want to kind of cut down on code duplication, so you write something called a share event handler. Remember how we did an event handler before? We double-clicked on a control, right? And then once we double-clicked on the control, what we can do here is we can select with the lightning bolt another control to do the same thing. So let's check this out. So here I've got my message box as an example, and I'm going to pull this up. And you know what? I'm going to make control copy paste for a second. Here's my second message box, right? And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say no matter which message box you push up, right? It's the same result, right? So, but now they're different message boxes. We'll call this message box 1, just so we know that they're different. So I'll go to properties. I'll pin this up for a second, and the text will be message 1, right? Here's message 1, and here's message 2. I'll make that change, and of course make these a little bit bigger so you can see the message 1 and message 2. And you know I don't like how it sits there, so we'll kind of give it space. Message 1, message 2, and of course now message 2 has to be renamed. If I go over here, message 2 shows button 1, right? So I'll say message button 2, right? And we'll rename this to message button, well, hold on. If I rename this thing, isn't it tied to an event handler? Won't that mess me the hell up? Right? Might. Let's try it anyway. Let's mess it up. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, cool. I changed the name to message button 1. Save everything. Go back to my code. And, well, my message button click doesn't change. But hold on. If I go to my lightning bolt here, which is my event handler, it says message button click, right? Well, this one doesn't say anything, my click. So what I need to do is to share the event handler is quite simple, right? I'm just going to go in here, and instead of double clicking on the button, I'm going to select something that already exists. So I'm going to select message button click. So now they both do the same. They both point to the same one. So let's try this out. So now it doesn't really matter. If I press this one, right? No. Or this one, yes, right? They're the same. They access the same event handler, shared event handler, right? We want to have that because, like I said, you're going to have multiple buttons that do the same thing. An example of that is if you had some kind of button that did something that we're going to have in a second. Like for example, we're going to have a form, right? We're going to have a menu. Maybe not today. I don't know if I'll get to it today. We'll have the menu that'll print option on the menu. We'll have a menu that'll do the message, right? I don't want to write a new event handler for the printing and the message. It's already there. I wrote the event handler. Why would I write exactly the same thing again, right? Sometimes you can have 5 buttons. They all do the same things, right? You know, but I want to use a shared event handler. Okay, cool. So that's the easy part of the shared event handler. Let's go back. So this is the one thing we do. We kind of click on the again, just to recap, we click on the lightning bolt. Even though we double click on the first control, we can select another control without double clicking, click the lightning bolt, and then choose the event handler we want, as opposed to making their own event handler. Doesn't make any sense, right? Okay, so that's one thing we did. And again, like it says here, it's a good professional technique to set up almost like a class level variable, right? To kind of handle, you know, which one. So an example of that would be, I want to know which of the buttons I click now. I have button 1 and button 2. They both share the same event handler, but I want you to tell me in the event handler which button I click, button 1 or button 2. That's different, right? And again, you have to kind of know which one executes different things, right? It says here, the key is to use the shared event handler is the sender argument, which we haven't touched yet. We've seen it in action. We go back here. And if you notice, here's the sender argument right here. It's part of every event handler. Look, sender, la, la, la. So the sender is an object that comes into the event handler, right? It says, I'm the sender. This button declares that I'm the sender. I'm the person that's sending the event. almost like the trigger. Who's the trigger man, right? The button, if depending on the button I choose, if I choose this button is a sender. If I choose this button's a sender, right? And that information is logged right here, right? So right here is kind of keeping in mind which button clicked. Okay, cool. So we got the sender argument, and it's a generic object, right? We need to use its name property, right? But you got to cast it as a kind of button, right? So for example, if it's just a regular, in this particular example, we're using a radio button. So we have multiple radio buttons, right? But each radio button is using one event handler as opposed to 5 event handlers for the same thing, right? That's a good example. But here we're going to have 2 message buttons, and we want to know which message button was clicked. Well, you can use the name property in a switch statement to determine which of these buttons, if we have 5, 10, 30 buttons, or whatever, they all use the same event handler. We use one event handler to capture it all. Well, how does that look like? Well, it's kind of hard to see on this one. We're just going to bring it up a little bigger. See if I can bring this up a little bigger for you. And again, you know what? You can use a class level variable to hold the select color. Like select color is in this particular case, we have a radio button with a selected color, right? Which is a color type. And we're saying, depending on the sender, change the color. Like make the selected color red, right? But we need to know how to switch it. Well, we have to say whatever the selected radio button is, right? And this is how we do it. We say radio button, in this particular case, selected radio button is equal to, we're going to cast it as a radio button to sender. And we're going to say whatever the selected radio button is, dot name, you can choose which one it is. And it's going to be the name of the button. An example would be radio button, message button 1, message button 2. That's the name of the sender, right? Let's try that on a real example. So here I am here, and I have got this dialog result. I'm going to make another little thing that goes under here. And we know it's a button. It's a type button, right? So we're going to say the message button. So button, right? That's the first thing, because we know it's a button type. Message button is my message button. We don't have a message button, right? So we're going to create one, message button, right? And let's follow the syntax. It says button, message button is equal to, actually we'll say message button selected, just to keep on track. Message button selected, big long one, is equal to button, we know we have to cast it, sender. Okay? So why am I putting this cast in? Remember we did this like way back in programming 1, right? Whenever I put these things in brackets, I cast or I change whatever this end result is into a button. So I'm saying the sender is now a button. Because right now, generally, it's a generic object. And C# doesn't know what kind of object it is. But I'm telling it it's a button when I go button sender. When you do this, you're saying, I want to cast sender as a button. Casting is a way of converting. Think about it as, instead of when I say cast, if you don't know the meaning of that, I want you to go back to programming 1. Maybe they talked about casting, which means converting. I want to convert one type to another type. Right? So I'm converting this sender, which right now is of type object, into a type button. That's what I'm doing here. Right? Okay, cool. Now I can check. I can say, well, this is cool. My return dialog result is good for the message box, right? But it depends on which message box now is going to show, right? So so basically I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to create another string. We'll call it message string. Right? So my message string is going to be, instead of this, do you want to continue? Right? We're going to let this off at the end. Right? We're going to say another if statement here. If message button selected dot name, right? Because we can do that because we've cast it, right? Is equal to, and we'll say which name is it? It's message button 1, right? If it's message button 1 that we're listening for, so one of the message buttons, then my message string is equal, do you want to continue? like we say here, right? Already. Okay. And just to be different, we'll say else message string is equal to do you want to stop? Right? This is interesting. So some change we have to make down here. So instead of do you want to continue, right? This do you want to continue has got to go message string. We got some other problems we're going to take care of in a second, right? But right now we've got this. Let me just pull this down so you guys can see more of my screen. Okay, that's the message button click event handler right now. So before it gets here to return dialog result, right? I want to know which button is being pressed. So the first thing I say, well, is the first of all, I have to cast this message button selected variable as a type of, we make it equivalent to the sender, or create a reference to the sender, which is an object, whatever object is clicking, and we're making sure it's a type button. Some button is clicking me. I don't know which one it is. Let's make whatever this button selected is, right? I want to get the name of that button, the name property of that button, which is message button 1, as an example. And if it's that name, then click out, do you want to continue? Otherwise, if it's any other button, for now, I want to say, do you want to stop? Okay, cool. Let's try this out. If I've done this right, if I coded it okay, I click this one. It says, do you want to continue? No. Okay, there's an issue. Okay, message. Do you want to stop? Right, so it detects it's one button or the other button, right? So different messages come up depending on which button I click, but I'm using the same event handler. Okay. Cool, I got to change some other things. I got my message string, and I've got my message title. Right? I didn't change that, right? So string, message title, let's change that up too. Right? And you know what my message string is? Do you want to continue? My message title is continue. Right? Oh. And do you want to stop? Then I'll change my message title is equal to stop. Different kind of message, same idea, but different message, so we know it's different, right? Okay, cool. So we can replace this continue over here in my message dialog. Let me just unpin this for a second. This continue can change to message title. Message title, right? So I'm replacing the message box literals that I had put in originally with variables. Right? Okay, one more thing. My yes, no is cool. I like that. My message box icon is cool. That's question, it's fine. But maybe I want to change some of this. My dialog result, if it's yes or no, well, if it's continue, yes or no, well, that's okay. I'll leave it the same. I can make it more complicated, but let's leave it alone. So I'm going to waste time here. So let's try it out. So again, my dialog box comes up. I click this one. Do you want to continue? No. It says no. And if I go message box 2, do you want to stop? It says stop on the top here, see? And I go yes, and yes, press OK. And here's my print form, which still works, by the way. Hey, what's going on with my print preview? Is it cut off? What the hell? How come it's not showing the top part of my form? Well, I don't care about that. It only shows me that's what's inside my form, not the whole form. That still works too. So cool. So we did, in this video, we did shared event handlers, right, which is cool. And we did message boxes, basic ones and enhanced ones. And the reason why I want to show you the enhanced version is when you guys do validation on your assignment number 6, I want you to use some kind of message box that comes up, something to show some feedback to the user. This stuff will be on your exam, guaranteed. Stuff like message boxes, shared event handlers, all that kind of stuff that we're talking about today. This stuff is going to be on your exam. So it's very simple stuff, but it's very useful stuff. And you need to know how to do it if you're building any kind of form. Chances are you won't have to build any kind of form this day and age. But any kind of form you build, you need this kind of stuff going on. So it's important that you know it. Any questions before I shut this one down?